All right, gang, in this module, we are going to work through installer management. So what does it look like to manage your installers? I would say it looks the same as managing anybody else. You're going to treat them as people. You're going to treat them with respect. Do what you need to do. So we'll get into a little more detail than that, though. Just to put it in context, where are we? We've looked at everything that needs to be done at the point of sale, preparation, organization. We've talked about communication flow and how to get materials delivered to the site. We spent a minute talking about the installation. Now we are going to talk about installer management, and then we'll wrap up with a final walkthrough and closing the job. So this is where we're at. What does it mean to manage an installer? What does it mean to partner with the right people? Well, first of all, you got to find and vet installers. So where do I find them? How do I interview them? What do I do to make sure that I've got the right people in my team? Price lists and payment terms. This is really important. You're going to want an agreed upon price list. Now, maybe you hit an installer that has an established price list that they can give you, or maybe it's something that you two have to work up together. But at the end of the day, you don't want there to be disputes over price. I told you this was going to cost this, and you're trying to pay me that. And payment terms. If you've told your installer that you'll pay them every Friday by the end of the job, or whatever works for you, then just agree to it. Contracts are important, but you are also building a relationship with somebody. So I personally find that contracts are actually very important. But if you ever feel like you have to pull the contract out on somebody, it might not be the right person. Material supply agreements, who's going to bring what to the job site. And I would encourage you to educate yourself on proper installation. So we're going to break each one of these bullets down. First of all, what types of installers are you going to need? So if you think about, in fact, we'll just do the math here together. If you think about a $2 million business, so a $2 million business, put that in the calculator. And let's just say the average job size is about $7,500. That means that over the course of the year, you're doing 267 jobs. Well, if I take 267 and divide it by, let's say we're installing 50 weeks out of the year, that means you're talking about five and a half jobs per week on a $2 million basis. So you're not going to do that on day one. On day one, you might have one or two jobs running during the week, two or three jobs running during the week. But at a $2 million business, you're at five and a half jobs a week. So in terms of the number of crews that you need, it's not like you need 100 different crews. You might need a carpet crew. Well, for sure, you're going to need a carpet crew. You're going to need a hardwood crew. Now, normally your hardwood guy will also install bamboo and cork. They'll probably also do your laminate and your luxury vinyl, particularly the rigid luxury vinyl. So most of the time, these three, hardwood, laminate, luxury vinyl, that's all the same installer. Sheet vinyl is probably the same guy that does carpet because they're accustomed to doing seams. Okay, so more than likely, those are the two. As a matter of fact, I would venture to say that finding a sheet vinyl installer is probably the most difficult one right now because sheet vinyl has sort of gone out of style. You're not seeing a lot of it being installed, and so you don't have a ton of installers out there getting into it. But you probably need a carpet crew, maybe two. You certainly need a hard surface crew. And then that hard surface crew is going to be different than the tile crew. Now, whoever does tile is probably also going to do natural stone. So this is really just one crew. But you're definitely going to need a tile crew, unless you're in a state where you're not licensed to do tile. And then you're going to need somebody that can sand and refinish hardwood. So you're probably not going to do a lot of jobs where you install bare hardwood, unfinished hardwood and sand it in place. It depends on where you are in the country. In the Northeast, for sure you will. But you will find jobs where somebody has a hardwood floor and they want it sanded and refinished. And so you're going to need that person. That person might be the same person that installs your hardwood, or it might need to be somebody different. So what are we looking at here? Somebody for carpet, somebody for hard surface, somebody for tile and stone, and then maybe a sand and refinish person. So you're talking about, to get started, you're looking for 3 or 4 different crews, okay? So when you're looking for installers, what are you looking for? And keep in mind that these installers are going to be the face of your business. most of what the customer sees in terms of the floor, in terms of what was done, the install day, rests on the shoulders of these installers that you find. So what's important to you? Some simple questions. First of all, would you want this person in your house? Would you want them installing your floors? Do they creep you out? Do they creep out? I mean, look, when I would interview installers, I would simply do a very quick introduction to my wife. I would introduce the installer to my wife and let my wife just meet him for 30 seconds. And she would do what's called the creep test. If the installer gave her creepy vibes, then this is not somebody that I'm going to work with. Even if I didn't pick up on it, if she did, then more than likely my customers are going to pick up on that vibe, and it's not going to make for a very comfortable situation. Now, maybe I can use that installer in empty houses and whatever, but those are the things to sort of keep in mind. Is this somebody that you would want in your home? Do they dress professional? I want them to wear the Floor Coverings International shirt. Will they wear the shirt? They don't have to smell nice, but if they've got horrible BO, then it's something to be careful about. Are they going to be reliable? Will they show up on time? Are they going to pay attention to detail, not only in the quality of their work, but also in how they keep clean? Can you trust them? Do they have insurance, and can they prove it? So one of the things that I like to do when interviewing installers, I told you I let them meet my wife, but that's not the first thing that happens. The first thing that happens is that I will typically, not wearing a Floor Coverings International shirt, I'll typically go to one of their install sites. So I've had a chance to find their card, get their number, whatever it is, and I'll ask if I can show up on an install site. And normally I like to show up at lunch, bring them sandwiches or bring them pizza. I'll pay for lunch for them. That automatically makes them want to work with me. So I'd show up and bring them lunch. Nobody else is doing that. Nobody shows up at an interview bringing lunch to the guys. So I show up, and it gives me an opportunity to see firsthand exactly how they are. Is their van organized? It doesn't have to be clean. It doesn't have to be 100% neat, but does it look like tools are where they're supposed to be so that somebody can go and, if they need a tool, they can go get it quickly rather than having to root around the van all the time? Does it look like they work clean? Again, I'm walking onto a job site, so I'm not expecting everything to be swept up and everything's always tidy, but I want to make sure that this is a job site. This is, if this were my customer, that I would feel comfortable with them walking home in the middle of the day and seeing their house like this. I look around the van. If I see 100 cigarette butts around the van, then this is probably not the person that I want to work with. On the other hand, if it looks like they're clean, they're neat, yes, of course they're dirty because they're working, but they look like they keep their appearance up. This is somebody that I might want to work with. So showing up at a job site during lunch is a wonderful way to just see exactly the way they work and to see exactly what they're doing. Where can you find installers? Well, you can go to a website, cfiinstallers.com. These are certified flooring installers. These are people that have taken installation classes. They've gotten certified. They're probably going to be more expensive, but these are people that are certified. If you can find somebody in your area, that's great. More than likely that they may end up being more expensive than what you want to pay, but who knows? More than likely they're going to do a great job because they've invested in themselves. You could ask at your local distributor, JJ Haynes, WC Tingle, the different readers, the different distributors that are out there. Typically, installers will have accounts, and your distributors will know who they are. Now, they're not going to give you this over the phone. This requires some legwork. You're going to have to show up in person and go up to the counter and ask, about installer contacts. You might even visit the loading dock of your local distributor. So if you show up there at 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning, when the doors open, the installers are going to be there to pick materials up. And it's a great way to just meet people in the parking lot. Ask your local rep. Sometimes the rep knows installers, sometimes they don't. It depends, but it's not a bad place to ask. There's also companies like ProSource in the Midwest. There's Menards. Sometimes even Floor and Decor, you can go in and you can find a way to get installer names. Like Floor and Decor doesn't install anything, but they have installer names. So again, if I walk in there unbranded, and I ask one of the associates, hey, if I were to buy this floor, who could install it for me? Yeah, I might be able to get a name that way. ProSource You can even become a member of ProSource where you get listed as an installer. It's a little interesting, but it gives you access to their installer list. Once you find one installer, it's easier to find the next one because the installers know each other. So you can obviously network with your current installers. You're also looking for, how do I put this? You're looking for the flooring suppliers, but not retail suppliers. You're looking for the places that your installers go to get their supplies. So again, once you find one installer, it's very easy to find where this place is. This is the place that sells only to the trades. It is the place that sells, it sells their tools. So if an installer is looking for a knee kicker or a power stretcher or specialty tools for hardwood or tile, this is the place that's going to sell to the installers. And as a result, there a lot of times they know the installer names and they can give you contacts. I don't know across the nation. I know in the Southeast there's a company called Fishman's. I think they go up into Virginia even. That's a great place to look if you happen to be in the Southeast area. But across the country, these little stores exist where they don't sell to the public, but they sell specifically to the trades. Those people are going to know who the flooring installers are in your area. And this is like, I don't know when the last time was you bought a car. Okay, apart from the mobile showroom, but I don't know when the last time was that you bought a car and then all of a sudden, you think you're the only one that has a Dodge Charger out there until you realize now that you have it, you see Dodge Chargers everywhere. So up until now, you probably haven't seen a ton of white vans with carpets sticking out the back of them. But now that you're in the business, you're going to start to see a ton of white vans with carpet sticking out of the back. So, if you're comfortable with it, follow them. Follow the van and see where they go and stop and talk to them. Maybe they stop at a gas station to get something to drink for the day. Who knows? You might even buy them a drink and buy them their first Monster of the day or their first Red Bull of the day and ask them what they do. Another place to look is new neighborhood developments. So again, this requires doing a little bit of driving around, but if you know where there's a new neighborhood that's being built, new homes are being built, watch for when the floors are going in and then go and meet the installers that are putting those floors in. Keep in mind that 95% of the installers that are out there, they are all 1099 employees for whoever they work for. There's very, very few installers that are out there that are W-2 for a specific company. So almost all installers are free agents. So if you happen to hit an installer on a job site, again, I don't like going up to a job site where I'm fully decked out with Floor Coverings International. I want to be a little bit incognito so that I don't get them in trouble with their employer. But you know what? They're all free agents. So if I go up and talk to one and strike up a conversation and build a relationship with them, there's no problem with them working for me and continuing to work for the guy that they're working for until we get big enough that, we pull them away. Other contractors that you're going to need, apart from flooring installers, at some point you're going to need a general contractor. Now, this is maybe somebody that you meet at your B&I group or Chamber of Commerce or whatever, but at some point you're going to run into a need where you need floor joist redone or something big, and you're going to need a general contractor. So you'll want somebody like that in your back pocket. Electricians, not very often, but once in a while you may run into a home where there's electrical outlets in the floor or there's something that needs to be done. Plumber. Plumbers, at some point you're going to need a plumber. You're going to pull a toilet and the supply valve is going to leak, or you're going to pull a dishwasher and the supply valve there is going to leak. At some point you're going to need a plumber, so you might as well go ahead and get to know one. Painters, in the beginning you're probably just going to install primed white, quarter round or baseboards, and you're not going to paint it. But at some point you may decide that you want to paint, or you might want to be able to give your customers the name of a painter and a finish carpenter. So most of your installers will be able to do trim work, but if it's custom trim work, you might want a finish carpenter, especially on stairs. If you do a lot of stairs and you're dealing with the banisters and balusters and those things, that's more likely a finish carpenter's work rather than in your installer's work. So keep in mind that you're probably going to need some other contractors. You won't need these guys very often, but you're going to want to have them in your back pocket when you need them. All right, so what have we talked about? We've talked about what am I looking for in an installer? Where do I find them? What types do I need? Well, what does it mean to actually interview an installer? What are the questions that I want to ask? Well, I've got an interview form out there for you. I'll show you. Again, I like to show up and witness a job site so that I can look at their vehicle, check their references, get an agreed upon price list and payment terms. I want to show you this form. So let's back out of this for just a second. And if I go out to floor 1.1 in our normal place, now you'll notice I'm in the production management systems and tools, but there is a subfolder specifically for installer hiring. So let's go into the installer hiring subfolder. And there's an installer interview form. And of course, you can download this, you can print it out. It is modifiable, so you can put your address and everything up here. I'm not going to go through this exactly line by line, but I will point some things out. So at the top, this is, last name, first name of your installer. How do you get in touch with them? These are questions you might ask them. What type of flooring do you install? Carpet, hardwood, ceramic? How long have you been in business? How many crews do you have? Do you work by yourself? Are you insured? Do you do residential and commercial? So this just gives you a lot of really good questions. Do you have your own tools, or what do you rent? So let's say that I'm talking to a sand and finish guy. If they tell me that they rent the big sander, this is probably not my guy. Those rental units are not very well maintained, and you can end up putting grooves in a hardwood floor and scratches in a hardwood floor because your installer used rental equipment instead of maintaining their own equipment. So, if it's material to the job and it could make a difference to the quality of the job, then I probably don't want them renting those tools. You'll learn more about that over time, but for now, what tools do you have? What do you rent? Do you have any formalized training, warehouse? What days of the week? What appliances will you move? Now, some things like a gas stove. I mean, in the state of South Carolina, the installers are not allowed to touch a gas stove or a gas dryer. So I would expect that they would tell me no, they can't do that. But maybe they're okay with moving a refrigerator, toilets. What do you supply for an install? Okay, can I see your work vehicle? You can give it a little rating. And then when you come down here, do you charge a minimum? So here's pricing. Do you charge minimums? Do you charge a trip charge to pick up materials? What do you move furniture? Do you haul away old flooring? So just some generic questions. And then you get into questions that are specific for the types of materials. So carpet questions, vinyl, hardwood, laminate. So a couple of things that I find for me personally to be non-negotiable. Do you have and use a power stretcher? To me, this is non-negotiable because a lot of your carpet warranties are not valid if they're not properly stretched in place. And so I know that carpet installers that are just doing spec homes oftentimes will just knee kick the carpet in and they don't really stretch it. So if you're talking to an installer that does not power stretch, then this is probably not the right guy. The other one for me that's a non-negotiable is whether or not they vacuum their jobs. And that's more than just wanting a job site to be clean when it's done. Sometimes, and it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes when a carpet is installed, there might be one little strand that's sticking up higher than anything else. And if the installer sees it, they can simply trim that strand right there and it's no problem. But if the installer leaves it because they didn't vacuum it and they didn't see it, the customer vacuums it and sees one little strand sticking up. Now it's like a big deal. Now they want their whole carpet replaced because there's a defect. Well, the reality is that it's just where the shear at the factory missed one. All you got to do is trim it back and cut it to height. But you might have a customer that pushes back on that solution. So for me, when it comes to carpet, power stretcher is a non-negotiable, vacuuming is a non-negotiable, right? Some of this other stuff could be a negotiable and we're okay with that. Like maybe this is an installer that's not comfortable doing pattern matching. That's okay. If you don't do patterns, that's fine. I won't use you on a pattern job, but I can use you on other jobs. Vinyl, do you install hard and soft? Do you install the underlayment? Do you undercut door jambs? Can you sand and finish hardwood? So again, you can see different ones. And these are just, again, these are questions to ask. You can ask more questions, you can ask less questions, but this gives you a starting point when it comes to interviewing installers. The other tool that I wanted to show you here, let's just go back from here. The other tool that I wanted to show you while we're over here is this material supply agreement. So the material supply agreement, this is in Excel, and I'm probably going to have to download this to make it do what I want it to do. Yeah. Okay, so I did have to download the material supply agreement, but it's right here, the material supply agreement, and I simply downloaded it. So now let's just take a look at this. This form or this document, this tool, is meant to supply you with questions, not to supply you with answers. So I'm going to delete these for a moment. You have a sit down with your installer and you say, who's going to supply what for a job? Now, that doesn't mean that this person is going to be the one that actually takes it to the job site. It's just who is it that's going to provide it, right? Who's going to make sure that it's there? So I would argue that if you've sold a carpet job, more than likely you're the one that's supplying the carpet. Now, again, it might be that the carpet is in your warehouse and the installer is coming to pick it up. That's fine. But you're the one that ordered it. You're the one that's brought it in. Floor Coverings International is the one that's supplying the carpet. If this is a job where you're doing courage or charity or something, more than likely you're the one that's doing the pad. You're doing a better carpet pad. But it is also possible that you might have a job where you're doing something, just whatever. You're just using a 6-pound or an 8-pound pad, and the installer brings that. Okay, maybe. For the moment, I'm going to leave that this way. Transitions, if there's any transitions that are needed, who's going to bring that? So again, this is where you're having a discussion with the installer. Who's going to bring what? Well, because you were in the house and you know what transitions are going to match, it's probably you. Tack strips. Maybe the installer provides his own tack strips. Maybe you provide tack strips. That's a discussion for you guys to have. Who's going to bring what? I know my installers, if it was just a simple job, more than likely, if you're pulling old carpet up and you're putting new carpet down, they're going to have a couple of tack strips to replace if there's any damaged ones or ones that are rotted. But if they were doing the whole house, then yeah, I'd need to provide them a box of tack strips. Seam tape is almost always the installer, and seam glue sticks is almost always the installer. Again, that I'm not telling you that this is the way that it's supposed to be. What I'm saying is that these are the questions that you want to ask your installer. So you're talking to a carpet installer. What are we going to agree on? What am I going to show up? What am I going to bring to the party? And what are you going to bring to the party? What about glue down carpets? Well, yep, I probably need to bring the carpet. But almost all carpet adhesive is the same. So you could order it from Shaw. You could order it from your supplier. That's fine. It might be that your installer has a carpet adhesive that they prefer to use, and you just let them bring it. That's fine. Again, this is not meant to give you all the answers. This is meant to give you a bunch of questions to ask. And maybe you bring the transitions. Okay, hardwood. Under hardwood, same scenario, right? These are not all the answers. This is supposed to give you a hand with what are some of the questions to ask. Who's going to bring the hardwood? Who's going to bring the underlayment? Okay, so again, this is another one. It might be that maybe your installer is comfortable dropping by wherever you want him to pick it up and picking up the underlayment, and then they bring that. Or maybe you've got a bunch of it that you just keep at the warehouse and you get it in bulk and you've got it there. Floor prep, transitions, baseboards. You know what? Caulk, it's all the same. The installer can bring caulk. More than likely, they've got it in their van. The nails or staples that they use for their guns, they're going to have to supply those because you don't know what their nail gun is. So again, this is not intended to be the answer. This is supposed to help you with the questions to ask your installers. Who's going to bring what? Typical glue down. So if you're doing an engineered hardwood on concrete, who's bringing what? Again, it's not the answers. These are the questions for you to be able to ask your installer. Tile, same story. Who's bringing what to the job site? Who's going to make sure that these things are there, right? If it's a floating floor, like a luxury vinyl plank or a laminate, who's bringing what for that? If it's a sheet vinyl job, who's bringing what for sheet vinyl jobs? So you see each product category, carpet, hardwood, tile, floating floor, sheet vinyl, they're all represented down here, okay? And then there's a final tab that says consider this. So these are some other things that you may or may not need depending on the installation. And again, I would encourage you to add to this list as you need to. So if you're moving a toilet, who's bringing the wax ring? Well, it might be that your installer is happy to do it and that they'll bring their own wax ring. Maybe you're bringing the wax ring. The installer is going to do the toilet, but you're going to bring the wax ring. Maybe you're in a state where you're not allowed to touch the toilet and you have to bring a plumber in. Okay, good. What about pedestal sinks? What about moving a dishwasher? What about supply valves, gas appliances, pianos, pool tables? You could go into grandfather clocks, aquariums. This is, again, this document is here as a helpful hint for you for things that you might consider, planning for in advance. But the point of this document is to have a discussion with your installer about who's going to bring what, so that on the day of the jobs, on the day that the install is happening, on the day of the job installation, that there's no question about who's going to bring what. You've already got the questions answered. All right, let's bounce back to our presentation. And again, that material supply agreement and the installer interview form, both of those are right here under installer hiring and resources. I'll also point out that you've got a contractor agreement here, which is a basic contractor agreement that you can download and you can modify according to what you need in your area. So this is that installer agreement. I know you can't read it here, but it documents expectations. It tells the installer that they have to have insurance. You get a signed agreement with the installer. This is that material supply agreement that we were looking at. Again, that's available. Download it and agree on who's going to bring what to the job, right? Make sure that you know this ahead of time so that there's no question on the day of the install, right? Oh, I thought you were bringing a wax ring. No, I needed to bring a wax ring. Okay, good. If that's cleared up in advance, it sure makes the install go much, much easier. How do you get to know more about flooring so that you're not caught, right? Well, you got manufacturer websites. Shawfloors.com is a great place to go. AHF Products, Cali Floors. You go to the manufacturer websites. Every one of these websites has installation instructions for every one of their products. So it's very easy to go and find the product that you're selling and pull the exact installation instructions for that, read up on it, and educate yourself. AHF has a fantastic website called floorexpert.com. It's maintained by AHF, and I mean it's tailored around their products, but it is an incredible database of information when it comes to installing hardwood, luxury vinyl plank, laminates. There's just so much information there. Solid hardwood, engineered hardwood, over wood, over concrete, different substrates. It is a fantastic place. The tile certification, ceramictilefoundation.org, that's a great place to go. There are Facebook pages, but I would take them at face value, right? I'm not going to blindly follow a Facebook page, but there's some Facebook pages like Flooring Installers of America, Tile Money. There's a Facebook page that's a really quite a comical one to follow called Flooring Fails. And again, you get on one of these pages, there's going to be good and bad, so you have to be able to sort of sort through it. But it is oftentimes like that Flooring Installers of America page is just installers from across the country. You might even find an installer on there in your area. But oftentimes they're posting pictures. What do I do here? What do I do here? And they get a lot of good advice, and they take a lot of ribbing from one another. Tile Sundries calendar, so calculator. So how do I know how much grout to order? Well, if you go to custom building products, they have an interactive material calculator. So how do I know how much grout to bring? How do I know how much thinset to bring? This is a really, really cool calculator. So that's available to you. What else? Where else can I go for knowledge? Well, there are standards organizations like NFWA for wood installs. or CRI for carpet and rugs. Those standards are lengthy, to say the least. A lot of these are actually posted on our Floor 11, and I'll show you where that is as well. So if I go out to the franchise owner's manual, but this time I'm not going to the production management systems, this time I'm going to merchandising resources. And if I go to the merchandising resources, there is a folder for installation guidelines. This installation guidelines folder has a ton, I mean a ton of install standards. So here's your CRI, Carpet and Rug Institute standard for residential carpet and for commercial carpet. You've got a Carpet Cushion Council, NFWA installation guidelines, NFWA link for hardwood floors, LVP, Floor Expert. There's a link to the Floor Expert. Here's a link to NALFA, so the North American Laminate Flooring Association. So there is and here's the Cork Council. So there's a lot of information that's out here. Again, this is under the merchandising tab. So if I go into the franchise owner's manual and I go to merchandising, you'll see it in merchandising resources under the installation guidelines. So that's the one thing, it's not under production because it truly is part of the merchandising section. But those installation guidelines are loaded there for you. Or go to the national bodies themselves and get the most current version of the standards. And of course, on the job site, I recommend that every so often, I wouldn't make this a regular thing, but I recommend that maybe once a quarter, you put on a pair of blue jeans and you go to one of your job sites and you help your installer. Figure out what it means to install carpet. Figure out what it means to install luxury vinyl plank or laminate. See what it looks like from their perspective. Not to hold them, you have to reassure them because there's very few people that do this. You're not trying to look over their shoulder and make sure they're doing it right. You're literally there just to learn from them, right? And so if you've got a certain level of trust with your installer, they're going to appreciate that you're there. So we looked at some resources in Floor 11 under production management. Of course, you've got your installer hiring and resources. And then we did pop away from that and go into merchandising and take a look at the installation guidelines. So that's there as well. This link will take you to the production folder in Floor 11, and you can bounce around from there. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for your attention as we continue to work through what it means to deliver a great experience for your customers. Thank you.